Hello, this is the GPS Insight Podcast, and I'm your host, Carla Wardin. We're talking to experts about everything to do with fleet and field. From telematics to dash cams to GPS tracking to today's issues, we're exploring what's going on in our industry together. Thanks for listening. Hello, this is Carla Wardin on the GPS Insight Podcast, and today I'm speaking with David George, our president here. How are you, David?
Doing great. Thanks, Carla. How are you?
Great. I had to ask right off, at work, we often call David DG. So if you see that on the screen right now, there are a lot of Davids at work. How many are there? Do we even know?
Yeah, there's at least 4 or 5 in sales, I think. So,
so
sure, there's many more.
Yeah, and we'll probably get more eventually. But
Yeah.
to get started, can you tell me a little bit about you and your background?
Yeah, so from a professional point of view, I've been in technology, I would say most of my career. Spent almost a decade at Ericsson selling telecom systems and services around the world. And then I joined a company called Trimble, which is another technology business that operates in, sort of underserved niches like construction, agriculture, transport and logistics. So that was my first exposure to telematics. Actually, I ran a couple of telematics businesses for them. And then I joined a software startup for a number of years, a company called SiteTracker. We helped launch their business in EMEA and APAC, and they're continuing to do really, really well before moving here to the US and recently joining GPS Insights. It's been about 7 months or so now. So it's been a good ride. And from a personal standpoint, you probably picked up, lived in lots of different countries. I'm from India originally. I grew up in Nigeria. My parents were teachers there when I was very young. So I spent 14, 15 years of my life there. Emigrated to the States when I was a teenager, went to college here, first job, grad school, all of that kind of stuff. And then spent about 20 years with all these different jobs in different parts of the world, mostly Europe and Asia, but also Latin America, Australia. So I've been very fortunate to see all the corners of the globe.
You really have. That is an extensive past of many different countries. What do you like about living here now currently?
Yeah, it's great to be back. I mean, I left 21 years ago, or actually 22 years ago. So bit of a culture shock getting used to things again. I think the biggest thing is just being closer to family, right? For me, that's been the toughest part of being abroad all these years, is being really, really far away from not just my parents and siblings. My siblings still live all over the place, but cousins as well, cousins that I'm very close to. So it's nice to be back. Nice to catch up with old friends again, people I used to work with, people I went to college with. That's been really good as well. Yeah, I think that's the best part of being back for sure.
I also love talking to people who have lived in other countries because you say things like niche. So there's just like a little tell of this guy has lived other places and has a good history. At these other companies also, and here at GPS Insight, what made you take leadership roles?
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, I don't think it was ever something that I particularly aspired to when I was younger. It just sort of happened, right? I think, and it's the way things work. You join a business, you take on responsibility. Whenever you raise your hand and say, "I'd like to do more," I'd like to help out with something. By default, you kind of gravitate towards leadership opportunities, and I think that's sort of the way that it happened with me. And then, of course, I was in more of the commercial side of the business, right? And that also is a natural breeding path for a lot of leadership roles, especially if your teams are doing really, really well. You get the opportunity to grow them. You get the opportunity to focus on bigger things, bigger commercial opportunities. So that was kind of the way it happened for me.
I think only leaders think that everyone gravitates toward leadership. There are definitely a lot of people who say, that sounds like a great job for you.
Yeah, no, I don't think everyone gravitates towards it. That's for sure. But I think if you're the type of person who sort of consistently raises your hand and says, I'd like to do more. I'd like to take on additional challenges. I'd like to see where else I can contribute. Then it sort of becomes a default that companies start looking for where they can give you those opportunities, right?
Have you had those opportunities from the very beginning? What was your very first job ever? And I'm talking teenager, kid.
Oh, wow. I think it was when I first emigrated to the US. So I was 16, sort of just and moved, hadn't started school yet or anything like that, and staying with some cousins in New York. And one of my cousins had just graduated and he hadn't found a job yet, so he was painting and doing various odd jobs. So every couple of days he'd ring me up and be like, "Okay, I've got this job. I need an extra pair of hands." And so I worked with him for the whole summer, and I made what probably wasn't a lot of money, but it was more money than I'd ever had in my life before. And
Yes.
it certainly went a long way. And I was quite crap at painting. I think I needed a lot of lessons, and um, but I got the hang of it quickly. And then I remember one time we went and moved an apartment. Like, I don't know how he got this job, but there was an apartment in New York City where the owner, the tenant, had passed away, unfortunately, and whoever controlled the person's estate was wanting us to pack up everything and drive it to some house in the Poconos. So that's what we did. It took like 2 days, just the two of us.
A couple of kids doing an adult job. I like it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We didn't break anything. We were very careful. Packed everything nice and neat.
That painting really does come in handy. My sister she worked for student painters in college and painted houses, and she's painting one of our barns this summer. And that's like, I don't know, 30 years later. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
and what about now? What's a regular day for you at work?
Yeah, I mean, there isn't sort of a steady routine, so that's good. I like that. I think most of what I do consists of a number of different things. So lots of one-on-ones. I have a pretty decent team. I have seven direct reports. I spend a lot of time with those folks, meeting with them, seeing what they need, what I can do to support. We're also, we have a great business and a lot of things working pretty well, but we also know that we need to improve in a lot of different areas, especially in some of our sales processes and cadences, on the marketing side, especially handovers between different groups. So we do spend a lot of time kind of digging into that sort of stuff, saying where can we improve, what's going wrong, trying to get access to data that tells us what we should be doing differently. And then I've got, very often kind of strategic meetings where we need to make decisions about kind of product direction, or, whether we should focus on one thing versus another, prioritization meetings. A lot of reporting exercises that we have to do both for the management team and for the board. So yeah, that's the sort of thing that happens from week to week. What I really enjoy is spending time with the team and with customers whenever I get the opportunity, which isn't too often, but that's probably a good thing because we've got some great people who are focused on making life better for our customers.
That is great. You mentioned that you were getting ready for a meeting earlier this week. When you talk about those kind of meetings, what kind of things are you doing them to help our customers?
Yeah, well, so earlier this week I was actually preparing for a board meeting, and that happens every quarter, and then every month we kind of give them a quick flash update. But board meetings, we talk about the state of the business, we give them an update on the financials, we give them an update on the things that we're working on to improve certain areas of the business. Future trends, that's always really important, right? Like what are we projecting for the next quarter, next couple of quarters? What support do we need? What investments do we need to make? Those are the sorts of things that we discuss. But it's not simply about showing up and having a chat. You've got to be prepared. You've got to have a lot of material, a lot of data to back up your positions. And that's what takes the time.
Yeah, they're going to want to know all that. Speaking of trends, what is going on in the industry right now, and what do you see happening in the rest of the year?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's that we play in a lot of different areas, so it's kind of hard to paint the industry in a single brush, right? We've got a very solid small business segment that we play in with multiple brands. We also have some much more higher value solutions that we sell into larger enterprise fleets. So I think what we're seeing, I'll focus on the second segment, the sort of larger mid-market enterprise fleets. We're seeing a lot more focus on more value add things like safety programs, driver coaching, and just wanting to get more data out of their telematics solutions to enable them to make better decisions and drive better behaviors, whether it's cost reduction, whether it's ESG criteria, whatever it is. But safety is definitely a big driver. So we're seeing more and more of that, and we think that's just going to continue into the coming months and years. On the small business front, I think we're seeing much less tolerance for just poor experiences, right? I mean, many of the small business customers have had telematics now for some time. They've, the industry is littered with bad experiences, basically, right? Companies either got a poor experience from a service perspective, or they got, hardware that didn't work, solutions that didn't work. So they're much more demanding about what they get, but still also equally demanding on price, right? So that's always the challenge and the battle that we have to fight. And then on the field services side, which is, a third sort of area that we focus in on, we're seeing a lot of good things happening there that feed into our trends. We've seen these mid-market companies, which is really our sweet spot, wanting the type of functionality and features that we're after, that we're developing for them, and not being able to find it amongst the sort of traditional players in the industry. So those are the kinds of trends that we're seeing that I think are in our favor.
Good. It's always good to have things in our favor when we're working through, and like you said, so many different areas and so many different products and industries, talking about hardware, software, all of them. When you do talk about this, obviously you came here. Why is GPS Insight a place that people would want to come and work? And why is it, and second, why is it a place that people would want to do business with?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of, you get a feel for an organization's culture pretty quickly. And for me, I think the thing that's most impactful about the way people at GPS Insight, and all of our other brands, by the way, I mean, this is a very common theme, even with like some newer acquisitions like CTS, that I've had the opportunity to meet some of the people there, is really this intense focus on wanting to provide a good customer experience, right? And people like genuinely get upset if we're not able to provide that good customer experience. And just a simple example is the Slack channels that we have going on, where we post all the scores that come in whenever we do customer interactions. We send them a survey, and we don't get 100% response, obviously, but we do get several of them a day. And whenever there's a low score, like a 6 or below, the organization jumps on it super quickly, trying to understand what happened there, what did we do wrong, what could we have done better. We try to communicate with the customer and see how we can improve that experience for them, right? So, and that just permeates several layers. It's just not one or two people. There's lots of people available wanting to jump in, wanting to dig in, all the way from customer success to customer support to product to installations. I mean, everyone's quick to jump in and see what they can do to help. And so I think that's a core sort of component of our culture, which is super, super valuable. And it translates also to why people would want to do business with us, right? So going back to what I said earlier, right? There's so many companies out there that have had bad experiences with solutions. And having a company that genuinely cares and genuinely wants to do a good job for you is kind of rare to find in this industry. So I think that's something that we use as a core differentiator. And then on the technology side, I mean, we have a lot of challenges, obviously, because we've got multiple brands and multiple sort of product platforms that we operate in, and we rely very heavily on third parties for all of our hardware solutions, partners like Geotab, Calamp, Zergo, etc. And we have a lot of work that we need to do to sort of pull all of that together. But I think we are quite unique in this ability to bring best-in-class solutions to the table, whereas some of our larger competitors, especially, are sort of very, very focused on their proprietary solutions, and it doesn't always mean they can bring the best experience for their customers.
That is a theme that I really like hearing, and that I've heard over and over in these podcasts is, part of our culture is making sure that the customer is infinitely happy. And that's always good to know for the customers and good to know for people working here.
Yeah. And we have to continue to do more, right? I mean, it's not scalable that we provide white glove service to every single one of our customers. But we want to provide good service as well, right? So we have to create better tools and better solutions that enable us to interact with, especially the smaller segment of the market, better. It becomes a larger and larger percentage of our customer base as time goes on. So allowing them more self-service options, allowing them ways to get the information they're after much faster. Those are all ways that we can scale without having to add, proportional number of people, but also still providing a good customer experience at the end of the day. Those are the things we have to keep looking at doing.
Speaking of experience, who are the people who have helped you in your career at GPS Insight and along the way? Who have been your mentors?
Yeah, I mean, at GPS Insight, there's been so many people that have been great to work with since I got here. I mean, obviously, I do have some background in telematics, but I've been away for a number of years, so it's been really good to connect with so many of the folks from sales to customer success and support and product, and just learn more about what they're doing and what they think the market needs. So all of those interactions have been super valuable. And I think the leadership team's been great to work with so far. But going back in history, I think for me, it's always been those people. Sometimes you say you learn more from bad leaders that you've worked with in terms of what not to do. And I've certainly had my share of those, but there've been a couple along the way. I remember years ago, when I was in grad school, I also had a job at UPS. My first sales job ever. I was going around kind of knocking on the doors of companies, cold calling 20, 30 of them a day, trying to sell them package delivery services. And we had a boss who kind of ran that office, and what struck me was the level of humility that he had in terms of his interactions with us, and his willingness to kind of give us the support that we needed, and the motivation that we needed to keep going day in and day out. And prior to that, I had of course, experiences with some good bosses, but I kind of also had some experiences with people that certainly didn't have that criteria of humility. And it really just sort of struck me as how much you could, as a leader, how much you could gain the trust of your people by just kind of being one of them, basically, and being very open and transparent and honest with people about what the state of the issues are, and where they could get support.
I think we can all really identify with that. I mean, we've had lots of jobs where you have good leaders and bad leaders, and our sons are working for us this summer on the farm.
Yes.
Because they have had good and bad bosses, and now they'll see what it's like when we're there, when we're the bosses. Trying to give them all the experiences, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. It should be good, right? How do you balance work and your outside life?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been through stages, right? I think there was a period when my kids were a lot younger when it was very hard to do that, because it felt like, obviously, when you're at work, you want to give 110%, and in the kind of roles that many of us have, it's kind of a gray line between when work stops and when you're at home. And these days I certainly work from home most of the time, so it's kind of hard to find that line. But as my kids have gotten older, they sort of need less of me and my wife, and we're finding more opportunities to do things, to just unwind and clear headspace. I'm very fortunate here in Boulder to live really close to the mountains, and so at least in the time that we've been here in Colorado, which has been about not quite a year yet, we're trying to take advantage of the outdoors and stay in good shape, and build a good circle of friends. It's kind of something we've done time and time again when we've moved, but it just takes a little while.
Well, you're probably an expert at it by now. You've been enough places, you know how to talk to people, right?
Yeah, it never gets easier, but this time I think we found this one particularly hard, just because the kids are, as I said, they're older, and in previous moves, they've been the ones that have spun up our social circle, actually, just from school and things like that. And we haven't had that this time around. So you got to work a bit harder at this, and try to get involved in activities like whether it's hiking or biking or whatever, and see if you can meet people that way.
Now, the first time that you introduced yourself to the company, you talked about a sport that not everybody knows about. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, well, I mean, unfortunately, I still haven't found a place to play it anywhere in the US. There are very few courts, from what I understand, but it's a sport called paddle, Padel. And I know here in the US, everyone's nuts about pickleball. I still haven't gotten into it. I kind of, don't really see the attraction. I'm sorry if I'm offending any pickleball fans out there. But yeah, I mean, it's a sport I got into, especially over the pandemic, but the last few years that I lived in England, super popular in Europe. It's fast game. It's fun. It's kind of a mix. Like I would say pickleball is maybe a mix between tennis and ping pong, right? And paddle is a mix between tennis and squash. So you're using a back wall. You're much closer together, so there's a lot more sort of chat with the both your partner and the opposing team. So a lot of fun. Like I missed it a lot. I managed to get some games in when I was in London over Christmas. And this summer we'll be in Europe again, and hopefully I'll squeeze in a few more games.
Well, I won't be surprised if paddle becomes popular here. You'll bring it to Boulder and it'll set on fire, right?
Yeah, that'd be great. As I said, I think there are some people trying to make it successful, so we'll see.
Thanks again for taking the time to talk with me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Great to talk to you, Carla.
Once again, I'm Carla Wardin with the GPS Insight podcast, and I've been talking to David George, our president.